Well, hello there, and welcome to the Total Woman Show. This is Dr. Barbara Young, and I have today my guest that we're featuring, Miss Sarah Griffiths from Australia. Hello, Sarah. We're happy to have you on the show. And I want to welcome all of you back this week because this is a show you do not want to miss. You want to tell all of your friends they got to view this show. First of all, I want to introduce my co-host, my permanent co-host, Dr. Carol Soloway,
Hello.
Medical examiner, chiropractor by day. By night, she is a writer. Sarah, I don't know what she does at night, but she's working. She's working. And I have my other co-host, Miss Althea Ledford, who is E, and E means she is the editor of the magazine E for the female executive, and she's all over the globe. This is a digital magazine, so you got to get a subscription to her magazine E. So I'm giving all of you a big boost today.
Thank
and
you.
If you need a chiropractor, you're gonna have to work on my back after this show. You need a chiropractor. Carol is the person to go to, but we're gonna talk, and I'm just giving you little adverts now because Carol is a noted author of Sex Happens and the prequel,
Gracie's gone.
Gracie's Gone. So you got to get those two books. But most of all today, we are happy to have you on the show. Sarah is a sex trauma expert from Australia, as I mentioned. She is a business entrepreneur. She's been a coach. She's an author. She's been in the business for 45 years. It's hard to believe that. No, no, I'm just teasing. I'm just teasing. No. She decided to change her career after a number of years working in the business industry. I'm funny. I didn't realize I was that funny, really. But we have to break up something, Sarah, today, because we do have a very sobering topic to talk about. Sexual trauma, and I'm telling you, it's rampant, and she's going to talk about it today. But more importantly, we want to know about you, Sarah, and how your story and how you came to be this sexual trauma expert.
Wow, well, it does go back a long time. For me, really, I've been on, the last 9 years have been a transformation journey for me. And it all started, I was about 8 years old, and it started for me in school with my own form of abuse, which was bullying. And it wasn't bullying that I could do anything about because it wasn't about me as a person. The bullying was all about the fact that we were very poor. So I was in a demographic at school who had more than I did. Up until that point, I'd just been a normal, healthy, happy 8-year-old as far as I know. But I went up to the next school. Suddenly my world was bigger. And I was exposed to this environment where I just didn't fit in, simply because I was poor. And the bullying that went on, it had an effect. What I've come to learn is very similar to the effect that any abuse has, where it completely altered who I thought I was as a person. And by the time I went to senior school then, even though I was clever, and I was lucky enough to be very pretty, I had absolutely zero self-confidence, self-esteem, and I just thought I had no value and no worth. And I carried that with me really until I was 45, which was 9 years ago now. And the very interesting thing about that is it probably shouldn't have taken me so long to recover. But what happened in my late 20s, having had, I was lucky enough, I had a great job that carried me through. And to some degree, I was able to hide my lack of self-confidence and self-belief in that. But I really, inside, I was so anxious about myself all the time. And what happened was that kind of, the emotional abuse, it was different, but it carried on in, I hate to say a low level, because it completely undermined me, but it was in a way that I couldn't really recognize in my marriage. So when I got married, it carried on. I got to a place in my marriage where I had a serious car accident, so I was very vulnerable. And when someone is vulnerable, you have a choice. You either protect and nurture them, or you can take advantage of that situation to your own ends. And to some degree, that's what my husband did. I don't believe that all the time he understood that's what he was doing.
Right.
But I certainly made it clear that I was very unhappy. And the reason it went on for so long is because what happens in any abuse situation is you don't know who you are. The person carrying out the abuse, no matter what abuse it is, they make you feel responsible, they make you feel guilty, you end up with all sorts of trauma bonding and gaslighting.
Yes.
And you can't see this for yourself.
You know, the interesting thing that you're pointing out that I don't think we talk about much is how severe are the repercussions of bullying.
Yeah.
And what it can do in damaging the self-esteem. And I don't believe we think of it as a sexual, you know, something that would cause a trauma and fit in that category of sexual trauma.
Right.
It's obviously it's not sexual trauma, but it is traumatic for the person that experiences it, and it completely, when it happens at a young age and you have no foundation to fall back on. Obviously, if you're an adult and you've gone through your adult life and you've been supported and nurtured and cherished, and you have a really good idea of who you are, you're clear, you're self-confident, and someone tries to bully you, well, you're going to be able to rebuff that and rise above it. But as a child, when it happens young and you don't have that solid foundation to go back to, you take it on as if that's who you are. You don't query it, you don't question it, it just is. I must be. You know, I remember I didn't look at that bullying and say, oh, this isn't about me, this is just because I'm poor. I didn't separate it in that way. I just had this overriding feeling that I wasn't good enough.
Yes.
I wasn't good enough.
Yes.
And that's where all abuse takes people. And that's why it's so hard for people to escape abuse, because they have this underlying feeling that they're guilty, they're responsible, and they're not good enough. So what do you do with that?
So how did you had a question.
Well, I wanted to know, did you speak to your parents? Did you have any support system at all?
This is really interesting because you have to understand this was a long time ago.
They had identified bullying.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
This is early 70s in the UK.
Yes.
I was the eldest of 4 children. And I remember going home and trying to talk to my mum about this. But what she said was, just go and find some other friends.
Not understanding what it was doing to you.
Not understanding what I was going through. And also not understanding, I mean, I didn't think of it myself at the time, that as an adult you have choice, you have power. And you can go and choose other friends.
Right.
You can do that.
Right.
But as a child, sitting round a table like this in school with a certain group of children, how was I supposed to go and find other friends?
Exactly.
So it was just dismissed.
Yeah.
You use the term trauma bonding. What does that mean?
Oh, trauma bonding. This is a very serious with any kind of abuse, and it involves a huge amount of manipulation. And it's literally where the person who is being abused becomes bonded to the abuser because they need something from them when you're in a vulnerable situation. So this is where with domestic violence, and of course with children as well, this is why so many women can't leave their abuser, because they need something from them. Their abuser is putting a roof over their head. Their abuser is providing the food. It's the only person maybe that they feel they have contact with. They've been isolated, but there's always a promise. So in between the bad times, there's the good times and the promise that it will be different. So you end up with this trauma bonding. And it also involves making the person, like I was made to feel guilty, responsible. It involves a huge amount of manipulation. And this is why people, when they leave an abuse situation, and 8 months later they're saying, why do I miss this person so much? This person who did so much to me, why do I feel like I love them? Why do I feel like I need them? Why do I miss them so much? And it's this absolute bond, this trauma bond where you feel like you need this person. Yeah.
I'm intrigued with something though. Even though you were bullied as a young child, you went on to become this successful person.
Yes.
So, which normally happens because we cover up and we put on the mask, and you became very successful as a business entrepreneur. Tell us a little bit about, I mean, how did that work out? And you married, you know, successfully. I mean,
Yeah. So that actually, becoming successful, I mean, I've been successful in my career working for other people. I'd always had an above average job. But again, internally, I wasn't successful. I still had this underlying lack of self-confidence and self-esteem. But what happened, it was actually October 2010, I nearly committed suicide.
what?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
did? What?
Yeah.
Sarah?
Yes, seriously.
Well, I'm not surprised, and I don't want to offend anybody when I act like, you know, because there are many people who've shared with me recently, that they were successful,
Yeah.
and they attempted suicide, and the underlying reason that several people have told me is because they lived in that success mode. They lived and defined themselves by their accomplishments, but inside there was that internal,
Like imposter syndrome.
right, absolutely.
Emptiness.
Well, when people get to feeling suicidal, if you feel that things can improve and you have a way out, you're always going to continue striving. But because of the way things were in my marriage, and because my husband, again, there was some of this trauma bonding. There was a lot of promises that got broken. And I was always chasing the illusion, looking for that promised result.
Don't we all?
But what happened, something happened around that time where a very serious promise got broken, and it broke me to the point where I felt I can't go on. I actually have no way out. Now I have no way of improving this, and I can't live like this any longer. So I actually wrote a note to my then 14-year-old twins, and I had decided how I was going to kill myself, and I went off to do it.
And what happened?
Okay, so what happened was I actually decided that I would kill myself by driving my car into a tree.
Oh, goodness.
I must have seen a film or something.
Yeah, that sounds like a movie.
yeah.
Okay.
I know. I didn't want to take tablets because I didn't want my boys to find me. And I know, looking at it now, I mean, it's bizarre.
I know.
You know, I'm a completely different person and I can't rationalize it at all. But that's who I was. I couldn't see a way out. And what happened was, literally, I started driving towards the tree at speed, and just something inside me just clicked. And I just thought, if I do this, my boys are never going to recover.
No, they won't.
Right.
And in that split
They won't.
second, and it was quite funny because in this split second I had this thought, and I swerved to miss this tree, and then there's another tree, so I have to swerve to miss that one. And I'm just sitting there then, in the heat of the day. You can smell all the churned up earth, and I sat there and I just couldn't believe. But it was that switch.
Your mind works really fast.
It was
in
that
trauma.
switch.
It does, yeah.
And I said to myself, right, you are going to get a grip. You are not that person. You've never been that person, and you will not be that person. And you know, I didn't even go home. I went straight to the shopping centre, who were doing a big extension, and I went to inquire about premises to lease. And in the March, so like 6 months later, I opened my first restaurant.
Wow.
And it was really hard.
Amazing.
That's
It was
amazing.
really hard because I still had all these insecurities. And here I was trying to run a business and manage staff and everything.
Wow.
And I had a really tough couple of years. But yeah, it was the making of me. I started to get over everything and realized that it wasn't true. Took me much longer to realize what was going on in my marriage. That's been quite a recent thing. But yeah, I got there.
I'm so glad you shared this, because I think that there may be someone who's even viewing this show and realizing that I don't have a way out. And there's,
yes.
there's, I don't know anything to do but to take my life.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that at that critical moment, that click of a second,
Yeah.
you swerved that car, missing another tree,
Thank God.
and went on to face a brighter future. You took charge. Have you been able to actually chronicle that in like a theoretical point of view? Like, here's what you do.
Yes. Yes, I did it in my book. So I wrote a book about this called The Unlikely Seven-Figure Entrepreneur. Because obviously
good title.
it was very
Good
unlikely
title. Good
that
title.
I would become an entrepreneur like I did. And what I've done, I've actually taken some of the stuff that was going on in my marriage as well, and I've written it as 10 chapters that are kind of step by step what to look for, how to identify it in your own life, and then how to deal with it. So that's what that book is.
That sounds very intriguing. So I think, Carol, you might have read a little bit of that book, because the author over here is very intriguing, and
That's amazing.
she's a reader.
Though, that you could, capture that moment.
Yeah.
And also that you went to what your children would do, because I had the same kind of, I call it my 11:15 moment. And what I did was I remembered a wedding that I went to where the woman lost custody of her child. And I saw that child and the father at the mother's funeral, at that beautiful bride's funeral. And I
right.
remembered the face of that little girl. And
Yeah.
it's amazing how we do so much sometimes for our children, but it's also for ourselves.
Yeah.
Right.
It's true.
Yeah.
It is so true. Well, I have to say this. I never said this publicly, but when my husband was diagnosed with dementia, and we went to the hospital for a workshop, I did. He didn't. I went, and there were 35 people around the room, and to listen to their stories of despair. And the doctor saying that with dementia, it's long term, there's no cure. And I, on break, talked with some of the women, and it was so despairing. Their husbands were at different stages, and I had one. This was a funny moment. One of the ladies says, my husband watches the show all the time, and then he says, after the show, we're going to get it on. And she says, and then he forgets. And I'm sitting there, and they were all different ages. And I think the saddest was a 53-year-old woman whose husband was a motorcycle cop and had a head injury that launched him into dementia. And so, because it was so despairing to me, and I'd never had to deal with, I dealt with the death of my daughter suddenly, but this was like, it's a slow process.
You see the person fading.
Yeah.
And day by day, I'm seeing my husband daily lose his mind. Well, the point being, and I'll get to the point, is that when I drove from that workshop that day, it's the first time ever I thought I should run my car into an abutment. Oh. Because it just seemed like this is...
There's no light.
Lost.
There's no light at the end of the tunnel here.
Yeah.
I mean, he had just been in the initial stages, and I'm thinking, and yes, it was 7 years, but I mean, I decided in that moment, so I can share
Absolutely.
that any of you out there, I know that all of us have those moments of where you think, but thank God I didn't, and here I am today with television and radio, my life, and of course it was 7 years, but I realized that I was going through a test, and I was going to pass that test.
Right.
And I passed it. Yes.
With flying colors.
With flying colors, yeah. And I miss him so much. But anyway, I've never really shared that publicly, just that thought. It's like, try to just run this car off,
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
So these things do happen. So I'm glad you wrote a book about it. And of course, Carol, we've all had our times where,
yes.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So, but how did you, move into another life from being the restaurateur who's really successful
Yeah,
into this sexual trauma expert?
Okay,
Exactly.
So that came about because obviously when I opened that business, I still had all of my healing to do. So I started to work on myself. It was a real transformation, self-development journey over the last 9 years. And what happened, as I said, I had those really hard couple of years. And then a couple of years down the line, I kind of thought, I'm okay. You know, people like me. They like me as a boss. They like me as a friend. I'm doing an okay job here.
Right.
And I got to the point, it was actually at 4 years, where I then opened a second business. I opened a second restaurant.
Oh, wow.
That was actually 300 kilometers from my first. And what happened once I'd had that for a couple of years, maybe less than that, maybe 18 months, people started to ask me, well, so if I want to do what you've done, what would I do? You know, or how do I run two businesses? How do you start to balance? So I went into a coaching, not full time, but people started to ask me my advice. And I was totally immersed in studying everything I possibly could to help me. I was on this personal development, I was studying NLP and CBT, I was doing everything to do with psychology and human development, professional development, so I had all this information. And really what happened with the coaching, I realized how people were struggling. I started to look at how long and painful my journey had been, and I just thought, I want a faster way to help people. This was nothing to do at that time with sexual trauma.
Can you describe how you started the path of thinking you needed help? Was there a complete thought that said, I need help, or did it just sneak up on you? How did you get to your path?
That was all part of that near miss with suicide. That was the opening my business and the extreme anxiety I had around that. I knew I had to do it, but I was terrified.
Normal, yes.
So I just thought, I have to heal. And I didn't even know then that the term was personal development. So I just started to do some research and realized that what I was talking about was personal and professional development, and that I better start at the beginning because I was just this shell of a person. And that's what I did. I have invested heavily in
What was the first thing you did?
The first thing I did was I got a book.
What?
The book was Get Out of Your Own Way. Yeah.
Great book.
And who's the author? That's Larry. What's
I don't know, but I've heard the title.
Get Out of Your Own Way.
I've heard the title.
And it was the thing is, a lot of people that I recommend it to as a starting book, they find it's too harsh. It's very in your face. It's very full on. So I started to read this, but everything spoke to me. It tells you that you're responsible, that you can't blame anyone else, that you have to accept the consequences of your actions and your words. There's so much in it, but far from saying, oh, this is too much for me at the moment, I absolutely devoured this. I just went, oh, this is amazing. This is just amazing. I loved it. I loved it.
am so delighted to have you. That we got to have you back next week because we want to get into more details about the steps. And thank you for that question.
Okay.
But you know what? We run out of time. I can't believe this.
All right.
I mean, it just went like that. But we've got a few more seconds though for a couple of quick 2 steps that you would advise the viewers today. If you're at that critical moment where you know you need help, 1, get that book, get out of your way, get out of your own way. Another couple of steps that you would advise.
Okay, so the first thing is decide. You've got to decide. That's the most important thing. Just decide that you need to change. Decide that you need to invest in yourself. Decide that your happiness is important. That's the word, decide. Whatever it is, decide for yourself. And then take responsibility. Be responsible for the decision that you've made.
Absolutely.
Yes, so own it. This is my decision, and now I'm going to do whatever it takes to claim the life that I think is waiting for me, and to become the person I think I should be.
I feel so strong about the message that you're saying, that there's so many people out there that are really, really in need. We're living in some really critical times now, and people are wandering and wondering what's happening, and the news is bad, and we have a lot of things that are going on that are negative. And so, but this is so personal in the sense that you have to decide how you live your life. I think the most precious gift we've been given by God is the power of choice, and we get to choose. We get to choose how we live our lives. You had a choice to make. Whether to hit that tree or not, you made the right choice, obviously, because you're here helping so many women today and individuals who need to know that there is a better life for you. I just can't, I mean, I'm thrilled. I can't wait till we get it more. We need more time. Maybe we need 3 shows to really get into it, because I feel it's so critical, the things that you talk about. And being that successful restaurateur, I want to know more about the second restaurant and what happened and what was the turning point that you went into becoming a sexual trauma expert, you know. So stay tuned, because we're going to have another show. We're going to have her back next week. And would you guys come back next week?
I think I can arrange it.
Twist your arms to come back with Sarah next week to be on the show, because we got a lot more to share with you. Remember, this is the Total Woman Show, Dr. Barbara Young. And you know, you can write in any questions you may have at info@transformationforsuccess.com. Again, you can write in questions, or you can call. We can call. Can you call? You can Skype call Sarah. So Sarah, give them your Skype number.
Oh, I don't really use Skype.
You don't use Skype? Okay.
No, we'll have to come up with another way they can
give them your website, or that they can go to your website.
So my website is www.sallyg.com. So that's the name Sally and the letter G.com, and they can easily contact me there.
Okay, I want you to get a hold of my new friend, Sarah Griffiths, and my old friends. No, not old friends.
We're not old.
They're not old, but really want to thank you for listening to the Total Woman, viewing the Total Woman show today. And we have a treat too, that I want to make a special announcement. We will have Sarah, who's going to be on the radio talk show Transformation Success on August 27th at 12 noon live. So we'll be talking to her. So those who don't get a chance to see the show, you got a chance to listen to her on radio. I'm so excited.
Awesome.
So bye-bye until next week. We'll see you then. This is Dr. Barbara Young. This is, tell them your name.
Althea Ledford.
Sarah Griffiths.
Carol Soloway.
And we're signing off and saying goodbye, and have a very blessed day. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week. Yay!
Bye-bye.
That was good. I want to know how to be more successful. You know.